to 2000. He has been the driving force behind the establishment of the African Court on Human and People's Rights. He produced the draft of the African Convention to Fight Corruption. He's received many, many awards. And I can say, for me, it's a special honor because he's also a wonderful friend. And he's been a supporter of our work from the beginning. So I give the floor to you, Adama, because we are looking forward to your remarks about genocide and about hate speech this morning. And we will then have comments that might relate it specifically to the situation in India. Thank you very much for being with us.
Well, thank you very much, my dear friend and brother. I should say that when you extended this invitation to me, I did not hesitate, particularly when you highlighted the fact that we do not intend to indicate that genocide is already underway in India, but instead hoping to discuss ways to prevent genocide. And speaking about hope, this reminded me the words of the Bishop of Rwanda, John Ruhisiana, hope in the time of genocide. And he was saying, we are preaching hope on the bones of the past. And echoes to that is also the words of Elie Wiesel. For the dead and the living, we must bear witness. But important also is what my good friend Shashi Tharoor, former Undersecretary General of the United Nations, stated. Human beings don't live in the long run. They live and suffer in the here and now. And also, an important, I would say, call is what Vedat Akrey, a Kurdish health expert and human rights activist, said. And I quote, I am afraid, my friends, that the ugly chapters of genocides and the deep-rooted history of persecution in the Middle East will last longer if we ignore the facts. If we keep silent, we will probably witness another genocide at a future date, and the price we may pay for neglecting our duty to act may prove to be too high. And I would say that these words are important. It's a kind of a clarion. And if I start, I would say that the choice of the theme for this summit is indeed relevant and timely, considering developing situation in India, which is worrying to say the least. And I'm convinced that this discussion will amplify ongoing conversation on how to address religious-inspired extremism and hate speech while remaining true to our collective quest to defend human rights whenever they are threatened and promote harmony among communities and our fellow citizens. Dear friends, we all recognize India's long and cherished history of being a melting pot in a turbulent world where minorities and majorities with different faiths and beliefs have peacefully coexisted, even going beyond its own boundaries to support those facing injustice and oppression. It is no coincidence that India has been referred to as the world's largest democracy. And I mentioned it earlier, Shashi Tharoor, and I can mention many other friends, the late P.N. Bhagwati, former Chief Justice of India, a great champion of the rule of law. But today, what we are seeing is that this remarkable record India had in the past is being threatened by growing attitude of intolerance and discrimination on the ground of religion or belief. Indeed, no society has escaped this tragedy, nor are they contained to a single religion or belief. unfortunately, in the case of India, the tragedy is that the authorities seem to be indifferent to the threat posed by intolerance and discrimination. And I should say that we are all witness to history, how diversity of religion and beliefs has significantly contributed and enhanced the struggle for human rights and peaceful coexistence. Therefore, the equal dignity owed to all mankind seeks respect for the differences in the identity of each person, and it is in absolute respect for the right to be different that we find authentic equality and our ability to peacefully coexist. And I would say that history reminds us the importance of respecting and cherishing the benefits of this diversity, managing it constructively, and allowing its peaceful and full expression. Only in this way can we prevent threats to the stability of our societies while allowing our fellow citizens to realize their full potential as endowed by our Creator, ensuring that national laws and policies follow international standards related to non-discrimination and to address and counter the rise of hate speech through messages of inclusion, respect for diversity, and unity. To this end, in addition to the central role of the Indian government to protect its people, we must collectively focus at the grassroots. We should empower national and local leaders to challenge extremist views through well-designed programs, training, and financial support. We should recognize the added value of partnering with non-traditional actors such as scholars, NGOs, foundations, public-private partnerships, and private businesses, because these actors are often the most capable and credible partners in local communities. Indeed, this meeting you have convened is a testimony how civil societies, private individuals, and groups can assume a role to create platforms to discuss and find solutions to most pressing challenges facing our communities, and particularly today, the Indian communities, those who are Muslim or Christian minorities, Sikhs, etc. So, because the day 3 of this summit is devoted to prevention of genocide, mobilization of civil society in India, mobilization of the Indian diaspora, diplomatic pressure on the Indian government, mobilization of world leaders to warn Prime Minister Modi that massacres in India will seriously harm India's international relations. As a matter of fact, discussing with a friend, an African leader, I was saying, well, I cannot understand how you can keep quiet in front of the attacks against minorities in India while allowing India to do business in your country. So to me, I think it's very important because genocide is a process. It doesn't happen spontaneously. It's a process. It requires resources. It requires planning. It requires time. And that's why recently I was really shocked when I witnessed the alarming surge in hate speech in India, when I witnessed the stigmatization and discrimination of the minorities, particularly the Muslim minorities. What we are seeing, of course, there is no doubt that it is grounded in prejudice, and that is why we have to go back to the roots. When we speak about hate speech, what is the root cause of hate speech? I mean, it is not a single root cause. There are several, and they include, of course, political competition, which become more intense during electoral processes, like what we are witnessing today in India. There is also, we can see hate speech also rising because of the unemployment and economic competition and uncertainty. Of course, there is also the structural discrimination and inequalities, the weaknesses in the rule of law, the violations or limitation of international human rights. So all these, of course, are root causes when we speak about hate speech, and the list is not exhaustive. And you may remember that even within the United Nations, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he was very much concerned about the rise of hate speech, particularly following the adoption, before the adoption of the Compact on Migrants, when the extreme right-wing groups from the United States through Europe, New Zealand, everywhere, were stigmatizing the migrants and refugees. And we saw it also at that time in Europe, and unfortunately, it is still continuing. I mean, I was shocked, for instance, just 2 days ago to hear a European leader making such a derogatory statement. I mean, saying, well, the Ukrainian refugees, we have no problem because they are European, they belong to our own civilization, making comparison with Syrian and others who were not, saying these are qualified. So this is simply unacceptable, because when we speak about prevention, I mean, we speak about everyone. And this is one of the reasons, as a matter of fact, when the world leaders met in 2005 and adopted the responsibility to protect, they refer it to the population. And when referring to population, that include, of course, refugees, migrants, everyone living within their boundaries. So what Secretary General did at that time was, okay, let's see what we can develop as a strategy. And that is when he asked me to lead a team of about 15 senior principals of the UN system, including the High Commission of Human Rights, the Director General of UNESCO, the High Commission of Refugees, the Executive Director of UN Women, UNICEF, UNDP, just to name a few, with a mandate to develop a United Nations strategy and a plan of action on hate speech. And it was an extremely challenging task because of the risk to open a Pandora box, which could have been used by some stakeholders to violate freedom of opinion and expression. But thanks to the strong commitment of all my colleagues, putting first the respect of human rights, we managed within a relatively short period to agree on a draft strategy, which was reviewed and approved by the Secretary General and formally launched on 17 June 2019. And I would therefore invite you to look through that document, which is accessible through the UN website and which will provide you with answers concerning the strategy. And we have, since that time, the Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide has been providing support to countries where there was a concern. And I hope in India also, the government will seize that opportunity to really develop a plan of action. So I say that what is extremely important is, of course, when we had developed that plan, it was about an engagement on monitoring and analyzing hate speech, on addressing the root causes, the drivers, and actors of hate speech, so as to contributing to identify the leading hate speech instigators, which the hate speech speakers, as some, for instance, I'm sure the organization at the grassroots in India may have in their monitoring already identified certainly leading hate speech speakers. But also it was about showing solidarity with the victims of hate speech and implementing human rights-centered measures which aim at countering retaliatory hate speech and escalation of violence. Because what is important to bear in mind is that when we speak about genocide, genocide is always preceded by hate speech. And we have seen it during the Rwandan genocide, the genocide of the Tutsis in Rwanda, where Tutsis were dehumanized. They were named after animals' name. I mean, the same we witnessed in Europe at the time of the Holocaust. I mean, hate speech preceded the gas chambers. And when the Jews were being labeled as all type of animals' name, they were being dehumanized. They were being used as scapegoat for everything. And nothing was done. But at that time, those indicators, those risk factors which were there could have and should have led the government at that time to take preventative measures so as to prevent the Holocaust of the and the Shoah in Europe. So it is also today, I would say, there is no doubt that that prevention also could be enhanced in the digital sphere through, I would say, a constantly mapping of the emerging risks and opportunities related to the spread of hate speech posed by new technologies and digital platforms, and defining action protocols that account for the new forms of digital hate speech. And even in the context of India, we have seen how the digital hate speech was also rising. And let me maybe just conclude by saying that as we focus on pursuing preventative approach to countering the ongoing extremism and hate speech in India, we must reaffirm our commitment to work together to advance tolerance among diverse groups of our people. And that is where your call for this day 3 is very important, call for mobilization, because it's not only the Indian who should get mobilized. I mean, I was very pleased at a time when Shashi Tharoor came very strong to denounce hate speech in India, to denounce extremist Hinduists. So it is a matter for each and every human being to stand when we see the signs of the early signs. So we should, of course, strive to promote education that specifically opens young minds to the other, those who are culturally and religiously different, rather than what we are seeing inciting to discrimination. And also we have to understand that we cannot promote such policies promoting tolerance if we only commit, as we have seen, unfortunately, in India, to pass draconian legislative laws, often a top-down process, to punish those who think differently. And I was very shocked at the time when the Citizenship Act was passed, targeting a specific category. Here I was particularly referring to the Muslims community at large. And you cannot, in fact, sometimes I just said, you have near than 200 million Muslim. It's a large minority. So today, more than ever, we need to recommit to our motto, never again, but make sure that that never again, which has been faulted time and again, leading to the Rwandan genocide, the genocide of the Tutsi in Rwanda, leading to the Srebrenica genocide, Cambodia. Let's hope that we will not witness another genocide following the genocide of the Rohingya in Myanmar, the genocide of the Yazidis. So enough of words. Let's move for action. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Adama. And if anyone has done, has spent his whole life trying to make never again a reality, it is you. And not only in punishment at the ICTR, but also in prevention as the UN Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide, and in all of the rest that you've done over your whole lifetime. We are very grateful for all of your work. Today, we're also going to be joined here now by two Indian journalists whose courage I am amazed by. These are two Indian journalists who report on hate speech, who go to the places where the hate speech is uttered, who literally risk their lives to report on it. The first is Alishan Jaffrey, who is a journalist and National Foundation for India fellow who writes for renowned news sites like The Wire, NewsClick India, Article 14, The Quint, Al Jazeera, and others. He focuses on documenting anti-Muslim violence in India, and his on-the-ground reporting has exposed hate networks and their ties to political actors. And the second journalist, who's just as courageous, is Kaushik Raj, who's an independent journalist and poet based in New Delhi, India, whose writing has featured in Article 14, The Quint, Two Circles, The Wire, and more. He's recently reported from the ground on hate networks in India with focus on exposing anti-Muslim hate speech resulting in violence. We're also joined today by a real expert on hate speech, one of the organizers of this conference, Ritu Manuvi, who is located in The Hague and is really, I'd say, the key organizer of this whole conference. So we're very grateful that we can have this discussion now. May I call on you, Alishan, first?
Thank you so much for that introduction. I would just like to begin by sharing certain facts, as I'm a journalist based in India, and I can simply tell you about what's happening in India for the last 4 or 5 years. After 2014, there was a spate of hate crimes against Muslims who were killed, and there was the suspicion of Muslims eating cow meat, and apparently cow happens to be sacred for the Hindu religion, and this was used as an excuse to kill so many Muslims in India. But it just moved on to many other things. And this set of people who were being attacked in 2014 till 2018-19, they were the most vulnerable Indians employed in the dairy and meat industry, and they were simply killed by mobs, and their videos were uploaded online. Sometimes people used to, just make these videos and circulate them in their WhatsApp and Telegram networks, and then these videos used to get viral. And people who were involved in these murders were literally, applauded by people in the Indian government and union ministers. What changed after this time was that these attacks, this hate and violence, it became very decentralized, and we saw attacks on Muslims in various ways. For instance, during the coronavirus pandemic and lockdown, Muslims were, blamed for spreading the disease, and they were accused, that they're trying to, plot and take over India by killing Hindus. Now, this was the kind of rhetoric that was being spread at that time. In 2021, there were many instances where Muslims were attacked, and I would say that for me, the tipping point was the attack on Lok Sabha, a Muslim Lok Sabha MP, Asaduddin Owaisi. He was shot 3 times by by right-wing Hindu nationalist assassins. Then there was this attack on Salman Khurshid, who happens to be one of the most influential Muslim leaders in the Congress. His house was burned. Now, you have this whole set of Muslims being attacked, and there's very little condemnation from even people in the opposition when even Muslim leaders are being attacked. India's most famous Muslim superstar, Shah Rukh Khan, for instance, was blamed for spitting at a funeral, and this propaganda was spread by members of the ruling party. I have seen in the last 1 year the rise of hate speech in India, and it's become very, there's no dog whistle now. People can literally say that I want to kill Muslims, and this is how I will kill Muslims, and get away with it. What we saw some time back in Haridwar, where influential Hindu priests led by a man named Yati Narsinghanand made calls for genocide against Muslims. It's not the first time when such calls against Muslims have been made. Apparently, another event just a month later, just weeks later in Chhattisgarh, which happens to be a Congress-ruled state, similar calls were made there. And my colleague Kaushik Raj, we together documented around 12 such events where similar gory hate speeches were made. We are told that by covering these events, we are helping the right-wing parties in a way by pushing their propaganda. These are just hollow dog whistles, and they will have no impact. But if you and this is factually incorrect, if you see just before, and this is the second anniversary of the violence in Northeast Delhi, in which 53 people, most of them Muslim, were killed, and properties overwhelmingly belonging to Muslims were destroyed and burned. Now, the same priest who made these calls for genocide at Haridwar in an event called the Dharam Sansad, before the violence in Northeast Delhi, had organized another Dharam Sansad, and at that Dharam Sansad also calls to kill Muslims were made, and some of the participants of that event had actually participated in the violence in Northeast Delhi. So, and it's alarming, and it's also very shocking that these people get away with it. It's not possible without political patronage to these people. They have their own dedicated networks where their videos are circulated amongst radicalized right-wing Hindu nationalists. And what we have seen in the last 1 year, that attack against Muslims can be justified. So the idea is to attack Muslims who are more visible, who apparently, I mean, I am a Muslim, and I may not be attacked in the same way as a visibly Muslim man may be. So you saw protests against Muslims quietly praying at designated spots in Gurugram, which is a city, a suburb in India. And then it turned out to be a huge protest. And now there are protests against Muslim women in hijab trying to attend colleges. And apparently Hindu nationalists are wearing saffron shawls and asking children to wear saffron shawls to school. There was recently violence in Shivmoga, and on several occasions in the name of something called Thook Jihad, which literally translates to spit jihad. That is a conspiracy that Muslims spit in the food that they serve to their Hindu buyers, or Muslim fruit vendors are applying their saliva on fruits. So there was actually violence in parts of West Delhi, and Muslims were evicted from that part of Delhi. Muslim fruit vendors and similar campaigns in the name of land jihad, which is another conspiracy that Muslims, who buy a land in a Hindu majority locality, they are apparently trying to take over the lands of Hindus and evict them out of that place and cause some sort of an exodus. So that conspiracy is also going on in another Indian state at the same time. In as many as 5 or 6 Indian states, there is a law, in the name of something called love jihad, that Muslim men are, luring Hindu women, and they're marrying them to convert them to Islam, so that Muslims can take over India. And all these sorts of different types of jihad, this is being employed to, attack Muslims. And it's so diverse and it's so episodic that one event after the other, they come up with a new kind of jihad, and sometimes the target is Muslim, vendors or working class Muslim men. Sometimes it's the Muslim women. Sometimes it's Muslim tailors. Sometimes it's it's Muslims employed in media or Muslims working in the Bollywood. So apparently, everything which is Muslim is being criminalized by these right-wing leaders. And Yati Narasimhanand, for instance, is the man who had called for genocide at Haridwar and also for violence before Northeast Delhi, the Northeast Delhi pogrom. A day before the violence broke out in Northeast Delhi, the man came on camera and said that we have to exterminate Islam and we have to root out Muslims. As long as Muslims are alive, Hindus cannot be safe. So we need to start killing them. And this is what he said on camera. And a day after, some of his followers actually participated in the violence in which 53 people, both Hindus and Muslims, were killed. I think all this should have been enough to, for the Indian government to arrest people like Yati Narasimhanand. And after huge outrage and international outcry, the Indian government did arrest Yati Narasimhanand, and that was just for a month. And we have seen this happen in several cases. This happened before. There was this event, a rally at Jantar Mantar, where around 3,000 to 4,000 people gathered, and it's just right next to the Prime Minister's residence, and calls to kill Muslims were made from there. And economically boycott them, and to ensure that they cannot practice their religion and that they eventually convert to Hinduism. This was said by some of the priests at different events. Now, apparently, this does not invite any action, legal action by the Indian government. And if there is any action, the people who are involved in these acts of violence and in these hate speech conclaves, I would call them, they are just let off. And we have seen that these propaganda campaigns, these calls for violence, translating into real life violence. People, for example, one of the men who literally went on to shoot at people, at students, Muslim students in Jamia Millia Islamia. He made other videos, calling for abduction of Muslim women, for killing unborn Muslim children. Now, that is the kind of hatred that has taken root in some parts of the Indian society. And the problem is that even very well-meaning, civilized Indian commentators, some upper caste Hindu liberal commentators, they tend to, tell people like myself and Kaushik Raj to not cover these crimes and ignore the fringe. But how is this even fringe? And why should this be ignored? That is a question that we asked to them. But I think,
Alishan, if you've laid out an amazing indictment here, and I'm very grateful for it. Now, if I could now hear from Kaushik Raj from his perspective, it'd be very helpful, and perhaps there'd be a response from Ritu and from Adama Dieng about what you've said, because this is very specific. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stanton. It is a privilege and an honor to share this platform with all of you here, Dr. Stanton, Dr. Adam, and Dr. Ritambra. Am I audible?
Yes.
If you can. Yes. So I would like to start by saying that while we all are sitting here, thousands and lakhs of citizens from different countries are stranded in Ukraine, and they are literally living in bunkers, in cold bunkers with limited food. And it is important for us to assert that we stand against war, because I think that when peace is threatened anywhere, it is threatened everywhere. And that is why I think it is important for the world to take notice of what's happening with Muslims in India. My colleague and friend Alishan Jafri, as he told you about all the events that have taken place in India against Muslims, all the religious organizations that are working in India against Muslims. So I would like to assert and I would like to put some focus on what has been the response of the Indian state to all these calls of genocide and all these hate crimes against Muslims. So, as my friend and colleague Alishan started with the mob lynching of Muslims, which started which started in 2014 after Narendra Modi took over the power. So it was not like the Muslims were not murdered before 2014 and the riots were not happening before Narendra Modi took over the power. It's not like that. So what changed after 2014? It is precisely this response of the state which changed drastically after 2014. So the first mob lynching which the world took notice of a Muslim in India was of Muhammad Akhlaq in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh in a city called Dadri. So what was the state response? The local representative of the ruling party, he went to the alleged killers of Muhammad Akhlaq and promised them government jobs, and uh, they even got government jobs. And when one of the killers, the alleged killer, he died he died in jail. The local representative of the ruling party, he went to his funeral and he bowed down his head, uh, and his uh, uh, and his dead body was wrapped in the Indian national flag. The alleged killer of the Muhammad Akhlaq, his dead body was wrapped in the Indian national flag. So that's what we are talking about. And when we come to the Delhi riots, which happened in 2020, so what happened is the Indian state completely ignored all these calls of violence by the Hindu nationalist groups, as my friend Alishan here told you about. In fact, there has been no FIRs against any of them, including Yati Singhanan and all his ecosystem for their role in the Delhi violence. Instead, what the investigative agency did is they arrested 18 anti-CA protesters. As I heard Dr. Adam was talking about the CA, Citizenship Amendment Act. So what happened is the investigative agency, they implicated 18 people, 18 prominent anti-CA activists, and they have been languishing in prison for over 2 years now. They are still in the prison. And out of those 18, 16 are Muslim activists. People like Umar Khalid, Sharjil Imam, they have completed over 2 years in prison for their alleged role in Delhi riots. And on the other hand, the role of the Hindu nationalist groups like Yati Narasimhan, it is not even being probed. Forget about giving them clean chit. The police has not even considered their role in the Delhi riots, which is which should be concerning for each and every one of us. And the person Alishan was talking about, Ram Bhakt Gopal, a minor who went to Jamia Millia Islamia and shot at an anti-CA Muslim student. Ram Bhakt Gopal, he was arrested. He was arrested right after he shot at the student, but he got bail in just over a month. He got bail, and after that, in the next year, in 2021, he gave a call to abduct Muslim women in front of a crowd of thousands of the people. So that is the response of the state we are talking about, that a person who shot at a Muslim student, he was allowed to again give a call to abduct Muslim women a year later in a uh, crowd of thousands of the people, and he was again arrested after he gave a call, and he was again released on bail a month later. uh, and the event which my friend Alishan was talking about, which took place at the Jantar Mantar, which is at the heart of the national capital, where the murderous slogans against Muslims were raised. Again, the same pattern of 4 or 5 people were arrested after the slogans were raised, but they were released on bail in just over 2 months. And even this Dharm Sansad, which we are talking about, which happened in the Haridwar, in the northern Indian state of Uttarakhand, only one person called Yati Narsinghanan was arrested for the genocidal calls given against Muslims. But again, the same pattern. He was released on bail in just over a month. And other the other speakers of the event, they were not even touched. There's not even an FIR against them. People like Anand Sarup, people like Sadhvi, Annapurna, they are not even touched by the investigative agencies. So why is it happening? What we can see is that there is a pattern, that first the FIR is not registered against these people, and even when they are arrested, they are released on bail in just over a month or 2 months. So why it is happening? Because the India's investigative agencies, they refuse to see a conspiracy behind all these events, because all these events are connected. The people who gave a call to kill Muslims during the Delhi riots, they were the same people who organized a rally at the Jantar Mantar in August 2021. They were the same people who organized the Haridwar Dharm Sansad in December 2021. So anybody can see a conspiracy, but the word which the Indian investigative agencies miss while probing the Hindutva events is the conspiracy. So there is no conspiracy. And when these cases go in court, why they fell? Because the lawyers of the Indian investigative agencies, at no point of time they argued that all these people work in tandem with each other for a common cause. They just argued that this is a person who who raised a slogan, and he's just released after that. It is not considered that they are all related to each other. They are all working for a single for the same organization, for the same cause. So that's what we are dealing with. And on the other hand, the Muslim anti-CA protesters, they are being implicated in a conspiracy case under the anti-terror charge, which is the UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So the natural question arises that why Unlawful Activities Prevention Act is not applied on this side, where these people are working in tandem with each other for a common cause. I mean, for a democratic country like India, is it a crime to organize protests? What the other side is being accused of, the anti-CA protesters. So the India's and all these people who organized the Haridwar Dharm Sansad, they have again given a call to organize the same Dharm Sansad in all the parts of the country. They have given a call to organize in the Indian state of Haryana, in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, in the Indian state of Bihar, in the national capital also, in the Delhi also. So why are they being allowed to roam freely and organize these events one after another? Because the Indian state just can't see a conspiracy behind organizing of these events. And let me tell you one more thing, that right now the opposition to the hijab wearing Muslim students in Karnataka, it is part of the same conspiracy, because interestingly the same groups are involved in protesting against the hijab wearing students in the Indian state of Karnataka. So you see the same characters being involved in all these hate crimes, in all these hate calls. But again, the Indian state cannot see a conspiracy. So the point, I would like to conclude by saying that, even if the Indian state refuses to see a conspiracy, we have to keep talking about it. That what is happening to the Indian Muslims in India, it is not like it is a spontaneous event. It is not like the Haridwar Dharm Sansad was organized spontaneously. It was backed up. It was backed up by similar events in the past, and it will be followed by similar events in the future. So I think only our voice can force the world to take notice of these events. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to call on Ritu. She is the executive director of the foundation, the London Story, and she's a lecturer in law at the University of Groningen. And she and her organization have been specifically looking at the geographies of hate and disinformation in India and in Europe. Ritu, you had, as I remember, a specific question you wanted to put to His Excellency Adama Dieng.
Thank you, Professor Stanton, and thanks a lot, Alishan, Kaushik, and His Excellency for your remarks today in this panel. And perhaps I'm going to go out of the comfort zone over here. So as to say that because this is our third day of mobilization and we are looking for specific actions, One of the actions that we would very much like seeing coming from the United Nations is questioning Indian government and putting a diplomatic pressure on Indian government on the indictments of the people who were called out over here by Kaushik and Alishan, especially people like Yati Narsinghanand, organizations like Jan Jagrut Samiti, Sanatan Sanstha, and the Hindu priest Anand Sarup, etc., who have been systematically and persistently putting out a hateful narrative, working in tandem with each other, as what Kaushik and Alishan have so beautifully elucidated over here, and against whom the Indian government has purposely, and I say this word, purposely failed to take an action. And I would like to know from His Excellency over here that I know that UN is doing a lot of work in this space of hate speech. There is also the documentation on the actor networks and how the countries need to identify actor network. We do have an identified actor network over here, an actor network which is going beyond capacity to perpetuate hate, using all kind of social media, using all kind of traditional media, which has been given to them. That actor network also enjoys the political patronage. So I would like to know that where do we go further from here? Can we expect United Nations to put a diplomatic pressure on the Indian government for this specific episodes? Thank you. His Excellency, you're muted.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let me inform you that I'm no longer a UN civil servant. You know, I have decided to retire since 2020. What I'm saying is just I speak on my own behalf, but what you said is what is needed is specific action. I was referring earlier to specific action at the grassroots level. That means within India. But listening to the two previous speakers before you, it looks like that not much has been achieved, and hence the need to mobilize more support. As you know, the UN is an organization which should have been, if we go by the UN Charter, an organization for the people. We, the people of the United Nations. Those are the first words of the UN Charter. But when you see what is happening today, you see that multilateralism is under serious attack. We have seen it just recently, the Security Council being impotent to address seriously the crisis in Ukraine, Russia, you know, and we have seen, in fact, witnessed India abstaining during the vote at the Security Council, along with China. So mobilizing international support is important. And at the UN, we know, of course, we have the Human Rights Council, which is, I think, definitely a body which should be addressed. And even there, you need more pressure. I mean, you have to organize first and foremost with the civil society, with the international NGOs, and make sure that you have states which are really willing to engage on this issue. As I mentioned it during my presentation, that India today is competing with other countries, for instance, in Africa, but also in other regions of the world, doing business. So how to make sure that those states which are really committed, including in Europe, reconsider the way they are dealing with India, making it clear that as long as you don't change, I mean, these are values, you know, which we share in common, which are in the UN Charter. We have the Convention Against Genocide, for the prevention. I mean, put it clearly, the title, Convention for the Prevention and the punishment of the crime of genocide. So the emphasis was first on prevention. And you may remember that this convention was adopted one day before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on 9th December 1948, which means a lot, In other words, what we have witnessed, the Holocaust, we should no longer witness a genocide in our lifetime. But unfortunately, as I said, we failed. Personally, I was trying to promote support for the Rohingya people. You know, we did not get the Security Council until very late. The Secretary General had himself to come forward. And at the time, Ethiopia was presiding the council. He sent a letter to the council. And later on, what we have seen is, thanks to the Gambia, while meeting with the Islamic Conference, a resolution was adopted, and Gambia decided to move and bring the case before the International Court of Justice, which is still going on. We have also, of course, the other case brought by Bangladesh before the International Criminal Court. So that means we need, of course, to see what specific action can be considered in the legal side. But to my view, what is much important is how can we make sure that within India, because there are many Hindu people who are not supportive at all of this type of attitude. I mean, he mentioned it, finally, the government of Modi took action against one of the actors who was developing dangerous speech. And we need, to my view, to get that core group within India, but at the same time, identifying who are the states today who might be willing to support. And first and foremost, you need, for a government like United States of America is one. You need to get a strong government who believe on those values and principles which make our humanity one. So it is not, I think, I hope my answer is not discouraging you, but it's not something which can be achieved in one day. It requires a lot. I mean, for the time being, we are trying to even work on a project which is the act at preventing atrocity crimes, making sure that at the Security Council, no P5, I mean, those permanent members would ever use its veto to oppose an intervention when it comes to genocide, crimes against humanity, such as what we have witnessed in Myanmar. Because it was possible. We could have prevented what happened in Myanmar with the Rohingya. We could have prevented what happened in Rwanda. I mean, today, no one can say that we don't have the instrument. We have the framework of analysis for the prevention of atrocity crimes, which means genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. And it might be useful, in fact, to go through that framework, which is a UN document, and because there are many examples which have been given by the previous speakers, and go through those examples, document them with evidence, and then say, okay, this is the situation where we are. Tomorrow, no leader around the world then would say that we didn't know. And I think starting with this alliance, I encourage you to go ahead and continue working, but using that framework of analysis.
I'd like to just open this up, and we're going to go beyond the 10:30 cutoff for this, because we do have some time between now and the next panel, and we got started just a little late. But I'd like to just pose some of the questions that have been put into the Q&A here on our, for this meeting. One is a pretty serious one, and perhaps one that it's going to be hard for everyone to answer, but I would especially, I think, call upon the people who are of Indian origin here to try to deal with this. Why hasn't the Prime Minister made a single statement to denounce the rabid hatred against Muslims? That's the first question. It's from Jilani Warsi. And a second question similarly is, what do you do when the police themselves are in league with the hate speech organizers and with the killers? What do you do when they feed false information to the media? In other words, what do you do about state complicity? So I open that to anyone who wants to deal with it or who have to address it.
Yes, I would like to answer. I would like to answer this. That the Prime Minister of India, the present Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he himself comes from an organization called RSS, which is the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, which you can call the parent organization of all these, the branches of Hindutva. And even this organization RSS, it was accused of killing Mahatma Gandhi, who is called the father of the nation. The killer Nathuram Godse, it was alleged, and many historians have proven that the killer of Mahatma Gandhi, Nathuram Godse, was a member, an active member of the RSS when he killed Mahatma Gandhi, the same RSS from which our Prime Minister comes. So it is very natural that the Indian Prime Minister is maintaining a silence and in all of this. And while the Prime Minister maintains silence, as I told, that his party men, his representatives, they actively support these groups. I mean, during the anti-CA protest, the union minister called Anurag Thakur, he gave a slogan to shoot the traitors, shoot the traitors. And we all know who is the traitor in their eyes. I mean, at that time, the anti-CA protesters were the traitors in their eyes. So a prominent leader of the Delhi BJP, the ruling party, Kapil Mishra, he gave a speech after which the Delhi riots started. He actually threatened the police that if you don't remove these protesters, they will take law into their own hands. And after that, the Delhi riots started. So, while the Prime Minister maintains silence in all of this, his party men actively support these groups. I mean, when you talk about the mob lynchers, the people who lynch Muslims, his party men, his union ministers garlands those mob lynchers. So that's what we are dealing with here.
Thank you very much. And very perceptive. I just want to ask one more question before we move on. We have Anisha Abdul Adam, who has said the state is also trying now to shut down NGOs and charities that speak out. We have a number of them, of course. They're using a lot of different laws to do that. Oxfam, Amnesty International has shut its office in India. And it looks to me as though we have a serious repression that is beginning now against those who would speak out. They're trying to create a climate of fear. So I'm wondering if you might be willing to address this, any of you, because it's the early time when the opposition is crushed. So any of you,
I would just like to add to what Kaushik had said in his last answer. He gave a historical context of the Prime Minister's silence, and I would like to speak about its contemporary context. People like Yati Narasimhanand or others, they are very influential. They happen to be Hindu religious leaders, and they are in charge of very prominent temples, and they're part of very prominent Hindu religious ecosystems. So when we assume that why is the Prime Minister silenced, I think the Prime Minister's silence, it's explained by the fact that if he speaks out against them, he will also get a backlash. And I don't know whether the Prime Minister approves of the words made of Yati Narasimhanand's speech or not, but what I definitely know is that if he speaks against it, his core support base will not be happy about it, and he cannot, make his core support base unhappy. And now coming to your question, I think the attack on civil society journalists, it's very apparent because you see so many people have been silenced, and this silence, because even journalists like us, when we write stories, we have to think twice or thrice. We have to be very sure with the facts, and we have to, read.
I'm afraid Alishan, we've lost your sound. Let me, if you don't mind, if you can come back, please.
And there can be a case against you.
Thank you. You're back. Now, actually, this raises a very interesting question that was asked by a person from Vietnam who belongs to the Daga people. Those are the Montagnards, as the French used to call them, who during the Vietnam War allied with the American side and therefore are now being persecuted. A lot of those folks are Christians. And as you know, in Vietnam, most people are either Buddhist or Catholic, in South Vietnam at least. And so the question that he asks is, what do you do? And this is something I pointed out in my speech at the beginning of this morning. What do you do when religion and nationalism are linked? When you have religious nationalism? In my speech this morning, of course, I said that is when nationalism turns deadly. We have an attempt to do that right here in the United States. We have Christian nationalism as trying to replace the very, open secularism of our Constitution, which specifically separates church and state. And now we have Christian nationalists who are trying to do the same thing, frankly, that Modi and the BJP are trying to do in India, where they're trying to link Hinduism with nationalism. What kinds of antidotes are there to that? I will open that to anyone to recuperate.
Can I ask His Excellency to perhaps take this question, because I think it also speaks closely to the work with the interfaith organizations that was also part of the Manifesto Against Hate Speech and the work that UN has embarked on. So please.
Thank you very much. What we are seeing, of course, definitely is we are seeing the seed which are being sowed for far more evil genocidal acts. I mean, racism, hate speech, white supremacism, fascism, violent extremism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia. But this is not new. And we did try, when I was special advisor, how can we mobilize religious leaders? And I would just want to, before I continue, to pay my respect to the memory of Sami Anivesh. Sami was one of those courageous. He was with us when we developed the plan of action for religious leaders to prevent incitement to violence that could lead to atrocity crimes. And for the anecdote, that meeting for the Asia region, because I organized regional meetings. One in, the first was in Rabat, Africa in Addis, meeting for the Americas in Washington, and for Europe in Treviso, Italy. And for Asia, I wanted to have the meeting in India. And I made the public announcement during the 100th anniversary of the Binares Hindu University, where I was invited to deliver the keynote address. It was in all papers. Then I submitted the request for that meeting. The PR of India at the time sent to the capital, Delhi. But later on, I understood that it was not allowed. The decision was taken apparently upon advice by the security advisor of the Prime Minister Modi. to me, it was really a shock, because India is such a diverse country. I had such much love for that country, the greatest, largest democracy, and here we were refused. But yet we continued. We had finally the meeting in Bangkok. It was adopted, launched formally by the UN Secretary General, and this is also another instrument. And I just came from Abu Dhabi, where the Pope, His Highness Pope Francis, and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar co-signed the document of human fraternity. And I was, as a matter of fact, in a process to identify who today in the Hindu could be a member of that community to promote. We should not be discouraged. I mean, it is true that we are facing so many problems these days. And it is, I would say, it requires courage to be not discouraged. But what is needed is what my good friend Benjamin Ferenc was telling me when he visited my office at that time, ahead of his 100th anniversary. He said, never, never give up. Never give up. So we have to be determined. And that determination also, as you are showing today, has to remain. And someone raised it in the questions, what about the OIC, the Islamic Conference? Why not? And I think it will be very important that the allies also write to the Secretary General of the Islamic Conference, write, if necessary, to all members of the Islamic Conference. Whatever, because at least history will show that we acted, that we at our level, we tried to contact those leaders for them to stand for the values. Because there is not a single religion which promotes violence. Hinduism is a religion of love. It's a religion of peace. It's like Islam. But we have leaders in Hindu today who are extremists. And you have politicians who, instead of promoting that cohesion, are trying to use simply those religious leaders for political gain. We saw it also in other places around the world. We saw it in the United States of America, the white supremacism emerging, We saw it, and Greg has made reference to it, but yet we should not get discouraged. And once again, I really congratulate you. Keep up with the good work. And as I used to say, dealing with the past is dealing with the present. It is dealing with the future. And we have seen the massacres in India before. So let's learn from the past. Let's make sure that this will not be repeated. That was the first words when I started. This meeting is not about stating that genocide is underway, but we are seeing some risk factors. And those risk factors should serve as a clarion to say something to be done, stop it. And we should engage also with Prime Minister Modi, with all the politicians. Let them stop abusing. Just to get elected, you let your own people being killed so that you sit in a parliament. That's not proper. So don't get discouraged. We are together.
Thanks a lot,
you.
Excellency. Just quickly, I'm going to jump in there. And thanks a lot. And thanks also for recognizing the efforts made by Swami Agnivesh. I grew up around him in the periphery. And I hope that we still have Hindu leaders in India which can stand up to what is happening in India. And I hope, what you said, that we are able to work together to counter the amount of oppression that our Muslim brothers and sisters are facing in India. Grigory, I'll give it to you from here to close the session, because
I just want to thank all of you for a very interesting discussion. And I want to especially thank Alishan and Kaushik, who really demonstrate literally daily courage in your reporting, in your writing. We thank also Ritu for organizing this whole conference, and I especially thank you, Adama, for your lifetime of your efforts to prevent genocide. So thank you, and we will now take a break, and our next session will begin in just about 10 minutes.